It was a cold autumn afternoon when Charlotte Wilde found herself sitting on a worn park bench, the wind biting at her skin. The chill in the air was unforgiving, and the world around her seemed distant and indifferent. Her coat, frayed and far too thin for the weather, clung to her body as if it too were holding on to its last shred of dignity. She pulled the fabric tighter around herself, trying to find solace in the small comfort it offered. But the cold she felt wasn't just from the weather, it was from the reality of her life. Once a promising rising star in the world of finance, Charlotte had built her identity on numbers. They had been her escape, her strength, her purpose. But all of that had vanished when the small investment firm she had worked for folded. The world she had known crumbled, and with it, so did her sense of security. She had lost her job, her home, and for a time, her will to continue. Now, with nothing but a frayed coat and an old notebook, she clung to the one thing that hadn't let her down, her mind. The notebook in her lap, yellowed with age and well-worn, was a relic of her former life. The pages were filled with handwritten calculations, graphs, and figures, symbols of what once brought her purpose. Charlotte's fingers traced the familiar curves of the equations, her mind wandering back to the days when these numbers had meant something, when she had been in control. But now, those same numbers seemed like ghosts of a past she couldn't fully reclaim. She whispered to herself that someday, if given the right opportunity, she could apply this knowledge again. But for now, all she could do was hold on to the belief that redemption would come. Her hands trembled slightly as they rested on the book. She tried to steady herself, but even the cold air seemed to seep deeper into her soul, reminding her of the life she had lost. Charlotte closed her eyes for a moment and let herself imagine a future where she would no longer have to sit on park benches, where she could once again feel the warmth of stability. But for now, she had to settle for the notebook in her lap, the one thing that still anchored her, even when the world seemed determined to break her down. The days passed slowly, one after another, blending into an endless string of hardships. Charlotte, now homeless, found herself wandering from one place to the next, seeking shelter wherever she could find it. She had no permanent home, no safety net. Her nights were spent on park benches, in abandoned buildings, or sometimes in public spaces where she could curl up unnoticed. But there was one place she always returned to, a sanctuary that offered her a temporary respite from the chaos of her life: the public library. Every morning, without fail, Charlotte made her way to the library. She had no money to buy food, but she had a library card, and that was her ticket to survival. Inside the library, she could escape from the harsh realities of life outside. It was a place where she could focus, where silence reigned, and where she could immerse herself in the world of stock reports and market trends. In the library, she found a sense of purpose again, a fleeting sense of hope that perhaps, if she worked hard enough, things could change. The library became Charlotte's haven. She sat at a corner desk, the quiet hum of the room surrounding her, the soft rustling of pages and the clicking of keyboards her only companions. The library's free Wi-Fi allowed her to dive deeper into the world of finance, where she had once thrived. She was resourceful, and though she had little in terms of material wealth, she had the knowledge and the drive to make something of herself. The internet was her lifeline, her window into the world of trading and investing. Through it, she could continue to learn, continue to apply her expertise, and maybe, just maybe, find a way back. Charlotte spent hours studying the stock movements of tech companies. She had learned to recognize patterns, to see the subtle shifts in numbers that others often missed. It was a skill she had honed over years of reading reports, studying trends, and analyzing data. Each movement, each fluctuation, held the potential for a new opportunity. It was a puzzle that captivated her, a puzzle she knew she could solve if given the chance. But for now, the library was her only refuge. And the notebook in her bag, filled with scribbled calculations, was her only link to a life she was determined to rebuild. One morning, as she sat hunched over her laptop, a voice broke through her concentration. It was Mrs. Jensen, the kind librarian who had seen Charlotte day after day, often wearing the same ragged clothes, always with the same determined look in her eyes. Mrs. Jensen had noticed Charlotte long before she noticed herself. She had seen the potential hidden beneath the surface, the fire that still burned in Charlotte's heart. "You seem to know what you're doing with those numbers," Mrs. Jensen said, a smile on her face. "You've got the eye for it. Maybe this will help." Mrs. Jensen handed Charlotte an old, slightly battered laptop. It was far from new, but it was a far cry from the outdated, slow machines the library usually had. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. This was a gift, a turning point in her journey. "Thank you," Charlotte whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She didn't know how to explain what this meant to her. She had been given a tool that would help her take the next step toward turning her life around. It wasn't much, but it was enough. With a renewed sense of purpose, Charlotte dove headfirst into the world of trading, knowing that the stakes were higher than ever before, but also knowing that this was her chance to prove herself. It wasn't long before Charlotte's sharp eye for detail began to pay off. She had been following a small tech company's stock for weeks, watching its erratic movements with growing curiosity. There was something about it that caught her attention, something that felt off, but also full of untapped potential. The company had been struggling for years, teetering on the brink of failure, but Charlotte sensed that there was a turning point approaching. Her instincts told her that the stock was about to make a move, and though most traders in the online forums dismissed it as a fluke, Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that this was her moment. She had just $50 left, barely enough to make a difference, but she decided to take the plunge. She invested everything she had into the tech stock, watching nervously as the days passed. The first week was excruciating. The stock didn't immediately surge as she had hoped, and Charlotte couldn't help but feel a rising panic. Was she wrong? Had she made a mistake? She spent sleepless nights, reviewing the company's financials, reading every report she could find, analyzing every piece of data. She refused to panic. She knew she had done her due diligence. The company had expansion plans in the works, new projects that could turn things around. And then, the breakthrough came. The company announced a major partnership with a leading tech giant. The stock price soared, and Charlotte's investment, her entire $50, grew into $500. It was her first real taste of success, and it felt like a victory not just in terms of money, but in reclaiming something far more important, her sense of control. The countless hours spent studying, the sacrifices made, had finally paid off. Charlotte's heart raced as she watched the numbers climb. This was it. This was the moment that proved to her that she could rebuild her life, one decision at a time. She wasn't just a woman with a notebook anymore. She was an investor, a player in the game she had once dreamed of conquering. And this was only the beginning. With her newfound success, Charlotte was able to move out of the shelters. She found a small, modest apartment, a far cry from the luxury she once imagined, but it was hers. It was the first stable place she had lived in for years, and it felt like a miracle. The security of a roof over her head was a gift, one she cherished deeply. For the first time in a long while, Charlotte felt like she had a foundation, a place where she could focus on the future. She didn't waste any time. Charlotte continued to reinvest her earnings, careful but confident. She knew that every move she made was crucial, and she was learning every day. The next few months brought steady growth. With each small gain, Charlotte's confidence grew. She was no longer the woman who sat on the cold park bench, hoping for a break. She was a woman who made her own luck, who took risks and calculated them with precision. It was at an investment meetup one evening that Charlotte met Jacob. He was a seasoned investor with a sharp mind and an intuitive understanding of the market. Jacob immediately saw the potential in Charlotte. He introduced her to a network of traders, a group of like-minded individuals who spoke the same language, shared the same goals, and were willing to help each other succeed. Charlotte quickly realized how much she had learned on her own, but she also saw the value in connecting with others who could guide her through the complexities of investing. Charlotte's confidence grew as she found her place in the group. She wasn't the shy, nervous woman anymore. She was becoming a respected member of the community, her insights valued, and her strategies followed. It wasn't long before Charlotte earned a reputation as a precise and methodical investor, someone who didn't make hasty decisions. but instead relied on careful analysis and research. She was no longer an outsider. She was a force to be reckoned with. Charlotte had come a long way since her days on the park bench, but there were still challenges to face. It was during this period of steady growth that she stumbled upon a green energy company, a sector she had been researching for months. The company was struggling, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, but Charlotte saw something others didn't: the potential for innovation that could revolutionize the clean energy sector. The company had developed groundbreaking technology, but its financial situation was dire. Charlotte knew that if she could make the right investment, she could not only profit, but also help bring this technology to the world. It was a risk, a huge one, but Charlotte's instincts told her that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Her friends in the investment community were skeptical. Jacob warned her that it was too risky, too unpredictable. "You don't want to lose everything," he said. But Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that this was her chance to make a real impact, not just financially, but on a global scale. She trusted her research, her analysis, and her gut. So she took the plunge, pouring her savings into the stock. And then the unthinkable happened. The stock plummeted. Almost overnight, the value of her shares dropped by half. Charlotte watched in horror as her investment bled away. Doubts crept into her mind. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe her analysis wasn't as sharp as she had believed. Maybe this was the end. But Charlotte couldn't give up. She had come too far, fought too hard. She believed in the company's potential, and more importantly, she believed in herself. So she waited. She watched, hoping that the world would recognize the value of the company's technology. She couldn't afford to give up, not when she had come so far. The breakthrough came when Charlotte least expected it. The green energy company secured a major partnership with a global conglomerate, a deal that sent shockwaves through the industry. The stock price skyrocketed, and Charlotte's investment exploded in value. It was a moment of pure triumph, not just because of the financial windfall, but because it was the moment that proved her instincts had been right. Charlotte watched in disbelief as her investment grew beyond anything she had imagined. She had made it. She was a millionaire now. The world she had once felt locked out of now seemed wide open to her. She had done it. She had turned her life around, not through luck, but through hard work, determination, and the belief that she could shape her own fate. As she gazed at her account balance, her heart raced with disbelief. This wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming her life. The years of struggle, the nights spent studying and learning, had led her to this moment. She had finally made it, and the possibilities seemed endless. With her newfound wealth, Charlotte could have easily retreated into the world of luxury and comfort. But she hadn't forgotten where she came from. She knew the value of second chances, and she wanted to give others the opportunity to rebuild their lives, just as she had. So, Charlotte launched a foundation focused on helping the homeless, people who, like her, had fallen through the cracks. The foundation's mission was to teach financial literacy, to provide people with the knowledge and tools they needed to regain their independence. Charlotte knew that financial freedom was the key to changing lives, and she was determined to share her knowledge with those who needed it most. At the opening of the foundation, Charlotte stood before a crowd of people, her heart full of purpose. "I was given a second chance because I believed in myself," she said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "Now, I want to share that chance with others." As she looked out at the crowd, she realized that her journey was far from over. She had rebuilt her life from nothing, and now she had the chance to help others do the same. The future was no longer something to fear, it was something to embrace. In her office overlooking the city, Charlotte sat back in her chair, holding her old, worn notebook in her hands. The same notebook that had carried her through every hardship, every struggle. She ran her fingers over the pages, remembering the cold park bench, the hours spent with nothing but numbers to keep her company. Now, as she gazed out at the city skyline, a quiet smile spread across her face. She had done it. She had rebuilt her life from the ground up, and she wasn't done yet. Charlotte Wilde's story reminds us that success is built on resilience, smart choices, and unwavering self-belief. From a cold park bench to financial independence, Charlotte used her knowledge and courage to transform her life. Her journey shows that with determination and the right tools, anyone can rise from adversity. At Distinct Dollars, we believe financial freedom comes from making informed, calculated decisions. Charlotte's story is proof that when you take control of your finances, you can create opportunities not only for yourself, but for others as well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Distinct Dollars.